American scientists John Mauchly and J. Presper Eckert built the Electronic Numerical Integrator and Computer, or ENIAC, at the University of Pennsylvania. This device was the first electronic, reprogrammable digital computer that could solve a wide range of computing problems. The original purpose of ENIAC was to calculate artillery firing tables for the US Army. However, its first important application involved the design of the hydrogen bomb. Unveiled in 1946 at a cost of nearly $500,000, the ENIAC operated nearly continuously until its shutdown on October 2, 1955. The machine contained over 17,000 vacuum tubes and around 5 million hand-soldered joints. The machine used an IBM card reader and punch machine for input and output. In 1997, a team of engineering students led by Professor Jan van der Spiegel created a replica of the 30-ton ENIAC on a single integrated circuit. Other important electrical computing machines of the 1930s and 1940s include the American Atanasoff Berry computer, demonstrated in December 1939, the German Zeit 3, demonstrated in May 1941, and the British Colossus computer, demonstrated in 1943. However, these machines were either not fully electronic or not general purpose. The authors of the ENIAC patent, Num 3120606, filed in 1947, write, "With the advent of everyday use of elaborate calculations, speed has become paramount to such a high degree that there is no machine on the market today capable of satisfying the full demand of modern computational methods." The present invention aims to shorten such lengthy computations into seconds. Today, computer use has invaded most areas of mathematics, including numerical analysis, number theory, and probability theory. Of course, mathematics is increasingly utilizing computers in its research and teaching, sometimes employing computer graphics to gain insights. The computer has helped to create famous mathematical proofs. "Show humility, your foundation is dung. Be noble, for stars form you." This old Serbian proverb reminds us today that all the elements heavier than hydrogen and helium would not exist in any substantial amounts in the universe were it not for their production in stars that eventually died and exploded and scattered the elements into the universe. While the Big Bang created light elements like helium and hydrogen in the first few minutes, massive stars, with their nuclear fusion reactions over long periods, were necessary for the heavier elements' subsequent nucleosynthesis. Atomic nucleus creation. Supernova explosions rapidly create even heavier elements due to an intense burst of nuclear reactions during the explosion of the star's core. A supernova explosion's extremely high temperatures and neutron flux produce heavy elements like gold and lead. The next time you look at the golden ring on a friend's finger, think of supernova explosions in massive stars. In 1946, astronomer Fred Hoyle performed pioneering theoretical work into the mechanism that created heavy nuclei in stars, demonstrating how very hot nuclei could assemble into iron. I touch a saber-toothed tiger skull in my office as I write this entry. Without stars, there could be no skulls. As previously mentioned, the stars cooked most elements, such as calcium, into bones before blasting them into space when they died. The tiger racing across the savannah fades away, ghost-like, without stars. Iron, oxygen, and carbon are absent from its blood, breath, proteins, and DNA. Vast distances blasted the atoms created in the dying ancient stars, ultimately forming the elements in the planets that coalesced around our sun. Without these supernova explosions, there are no mist-covered swamps, computer chips, trilobites, Mozarts, or the tears of a little girl. There could be a heaven without exploding stars, but no Earth exists. Physicist Denis Gabor invented holography, which records and reproduces a three-dimensional image in 1947. In his Nobel Prize acceptance speech for the invention, he said of holography, "I need not write down a single equation or show an abstract graph." Of course, one can introduce almost any amount of mathematics into holography, but physical arguments can explain and understand the essentials. Consider an object like a lovely peach. Photographic film can store holograms as a record of the peach from various perspectives. A beam splitter divides the laser light into a reference beam and an object beam to produce a transmission hologram. A mirror directs the reference beam toward the recording film, which does not interact with the peach. The object beam aims directly at the peach. The peach reflects light, which collides with the reference beam to form an interference pattern in the film. This pattern of stripes and whorls is totally unrecognizable. After developing the film, one can reconstruct a 3D image of a peach in space by directing light toward the hologram at the same angle as the reference beam. The finely spaced fringes on the hologram film act to diffract or deflect the light to form the 3D image. Upon seeing your first hologram, write physicists Joseph Caspar and Stephen Feller, you are certain to feel puzzlement and disbelief. You may place your hand where the scene appears to lie, only to find nothing tangible is there. Transmission holograms employ light shining through the developed film from behind, and reflection holograms use light shining on the film with the light source in front of the film. Some holograms require laser light, while rainbow holograms, such as those with a reflective coating commonly seen on credit cards, can be viewed without lasers. You can also use holography to optically store large amounts of data. Photosynthesis is the quiet, unnoticed chemistry that keeps everyone and everything on Earth alive. Our planet's atmosphere didn't even have much oxygen until photosynthetic microbes began cranking it out as a waste product, gradually killing off the planet's original microbial inhabitants or driving them into hiding. In addition to producing oxygen, photosynthesis regulates air carbon dioxide. As if making our atmosphere breathable were not enough, photosynthesis underpins the global food chain for almost every living organism, including humankind. The strange thing is that the entire process depends on what appears to be one of the clunkiest enzymes ever seen. In 1947, Samuel Goodnow Wildman reported his discovery of a large, extremely abundant enzyme in spinach leaves that became a key player. The enzyme, whose lab name is Rubisco, which stands for ribulose bis carboxylase oxygenase, is an important part of the Calvin cycle, like the Krebs cycle in cells but in plants. American biochemist Melvin Calvin made this discovery in collaboration with his compatriots James Allen Basham, a chemist, and Andrew Alm Benson, a biologist. Instead of mitochondria, plant cells rely on other ancient interlopers called chloroplasts to perform this function. Rubisco, the most abundant protein on Earth, can account for up to half of a plant's protein weight. There's so much of it because it's an incredibly slow enzyme. It processes 3 rather than zipping through thousands of molecular changes per second. It may be that this bizarrely low rate is a trade-off against its ability to tell carbon dioxide from oxygen. This is still an open question. After several billion years of evolutionary pressure, odds are that there must be beneficial reasons for such an important enzyme to be so strange. But many research groups are putting that to the test by observing what happens if they try to improve it for use in artificial photosynthesis. 1,000 years from now, when our ancestors reflect upon history, they will mark December 16, 1947, as the start of humankind's information age, the day on which Bell Telephone Laboratories physicists John Bardeen and Walter Brattain connected 2 upper electrodes to a piece of specially treated germanium that sat on a 3rd electrode, a metal plate attached to a voltage source. Introducing a small current through one of the upper electrodes led to a much stronger current flow through the other 2 electrodes. The transistor was born. Given the magnitude of the discovery, Bardeen's reaction was rather sedate. That evening, walking in through the kitchen door of his home, he mumbled to his wife, "We discovered something important today," and he said no more. Their fellow scientist, William Shockley, understood the device's enormous potential and contributed to the semiconductor knowledge. Later, Shockley, enraged by his exclusion from the Bell Labs transistor patent, which featured only the names of Bardeen and Bratton, developed an improved transistor design. A transistor is a semiconductor device that may amplify or switch electronic signals. An electrical signal can control the conductivity of a semiconductor material. Depending on the transistor design, a voltage or current applied to one pair of the transistor's terminals alters the current flowing through another terminal. Physicists Michael Reardon and Lillian Hodderson write, "It is hard to imagine any device more crucial to modern life than the microchip and the transistor from which it emerged. People take their vast benefits for granted every waking hour. In cellular phones, ATMs, wristwatches, calculators, computers, automobiles, radios, televisions, fax machines, copiers, stoplights, and thousands of electronic devices. The transistor is the most important artifact of the 20th century, as well as the nerve cell of our electronic age. Fast transistors from graphene, sheets of carbon atoms, and carbon nanotubes may become practical. In 1925, physicist Julius Lilienfeld was the first to file a patent for an early version of the transistor. American mathematician Claude Shannon laid the foundations for this information age in 1948 with his publication of A Mathematical Theory of Communication, in which teenagers watch TV, cruise the internet, spin their DVDs, and chat endlessly on the phone. Information theory is a discipline of applied mathematics concerned with quantifying data, and it helps scientists understand the capacity of various systems to store, transmit, and process information. Data compression and methods to reduce noise and error rates are important aspects of information theory, enabling reliable storage and communication of as much data as possible over a channel. The average number of bits required for storage or communication, known as information entropy, typically expresses the measure of information. Ludwig Boltzmann and J. Willard Gibbs established much of the mathematics behind information theory in thermodynamics. Alan Turing also used similar ideas when breaking the German Enigma ciphers during World War II. Information theory affects various fields, ranging from mathematics and computer science to neurobiology, linguistics, and black holes. Information theory has practical applications, such as breaking codes and recovering from errors caused by scratches on movie DVDs. According to a 1953 issue of Fortune, it may be no exaggeration to say that man's progress in peace and security in war depends more on fruitful applications of information theory than on physical demonstrations, either in bombs or in power plants, that Einstein's famous equation works. Claude Shannon died in 2001 at the age of 84 after a long struggle with Alzheimer's disease. At one point in his life, he had been an excellent juggler, unicyclist, and chess player. Sadly, he could not observe the information age he helped create due to his affliction. Quantum electrodynamics, QED, is arguably the most precise theory of natural phenomena ever advanced, writes physicist Brian Greene. Through quantum electrodynamics, physicists have been able to solidify the role of photons as the smallest possible bundles of light and reveal their interactions with electrically charged particles such as electrons in a mathematically complete, predictable, and convincing framework. QED mathematically describes the interactions of light with matter and charged particles with one another. The English physicist Paul Dirac laid the groundwork for QED in 1928, and physicists Richard P. Feynman, Julian S. Schwinger, and Shinichiro Tominaga refined and developed the theory in the late 1940s. QED relies on the idea that charged particles, such as electrons, interact by emitting and absorbing photons, which are the particles that transmit electromagnetic forces. Interestingly, interacting particles change their speed and direction of travel when they absorb or release the energy of a photon, thereby providing the force of the interaction. Squiggly Feynman diagrams graphically represent and understand the interactions. These drawings also help physicists calculate the probability that particular interactions occur. According to QED theory, the greater the number of virtual photons exchanged in an interaction, i.e., a more complex interaction, the less likely the process will occur. The accuracy of predictions made by QED is astonishing. For example, the predicted strength of the magnetic field carried by an electron is so close to the experimental value that if you could measure the distance from New York to Los Angeles with this accuracy, you would be accurate to within the thickness of a human hair. QED has served as a launchpad for subsequent theories, such as quantum chromodynamics, which began in the early 1960s and involves strong forces that hold quarks together by exchanging particles called gluons. Quarks combine to form other subatomic particles, such as protons and neutrons. The test design for determining a medical treatment's efficacy can be surprisingly difficult for many reasons. For example, physicians and test subjects may view results in a biased and non-objective fashion. Treatment effects may be subtle, and patients may respond favorably simply due to the placebo effect, in which a patient thinks her condition is improving after taking a fake treatment, such as an inert sugar pill, that she believes should be effective. Today, the randomized controlled trial, RCT, is one of the most reliable approaches for testing possible medical treatments. We should randomly choose the nature of a treatment to ensure that every patient has an equal chance of receiving each treatment under study. For instance, we could randomly assign each trial participant to one of two groups, where one group would receive medicine X and the other would receive a different treatment. RCTs may be double-blind, meaning that neither the primary researchers nor the patients know which patients are in the treated group, receiving a new drug, or the control group, receiving a standard treatment. Researchers and physicians typically perform RCTs for ethical reasons when uncertain about the preferred treatment. The most famous early clinical study involving RCT is English statistician Bradford Hill's streptomycin treatment of pulmonary tuberculosis, published in 1948 in the British Medical Journal. In this study, patients randomly received a sealed envelope containing a card marked S for streptomycin, an antibiotic, and bed rest, or C for control, bed rest only. The study clearly demonstrated the effectiveness of streptomycin. Murray Enkin, a clinical epidemiologist, rightly regards this trial as a landmark that ushered in a new era of medicine. Evidence-based medicine currently stems from hundreds of thousands of such trials. People have rightly hailed the RCT concept as a paradigm shift in our approach to clinical decision-making. If you were interested in finding out the age of things, the University of Chicago in the 1940s was the place to be, writes author Bill Bryson. Radiocarbon dating, invented by Willard Libby, allowed scientists to accurately date bones and other organic remains for the first time. Radiocarbon dating involves measuring the abundance of the radioactive element carbon-14, 14C, in a carbon-containing sample. The method relies on the impact of cosmic rays on nitrogen atoms to create 14C in the atmosphere. Plants incorporate 14C, which animals then consume. While an animal is alive, the abundance of 14C in its body roughly matches the atmosphere's. 14C continually decays at a known exponential rate, converting to nitrogen-14. And once the animal dies and no longer replenishes its 14C supply from the environment, its remains slowly lose 14C. By detecting the amount of 14C in a sample, scientists can estimate its age if the sample is at most 60,000 years. Older samples generally contain too little of 14C to measure accurately. 14C has a half-life of about 5,030 years due to radioactive decay. This means that every 5,030 years, the amount of 14C in a sample has dropped by half. We make small calibrations to improve the dating accuracy, because the amount of atmospheric 14C varies slightly over time. Also, due to atomic bomb tests, atmospheric 14C increased during the 1950s. You can use accelerator mass spectrometry to detect 14C abundances in milligram samples. Before radiocarbon dating, obtaining reliable dates before the first dynasty in Egypt, around 3000 BCE, wasn't challenging. This was quite frustrating for archaeologists who were feverish to know, for example, when Cro-Magnon people painted the caves of Lascaux in France, or when the last ice age finally ended. What time is it? Is time travel possible? For centuries, these questions have intrigued philosophers and scientists. Today, we know for certain that time travel is possible. For example, scientists have demonstrated that objects traveling at high speeds age more slowly than stationary objects in a laboratory frame of reference. If you could travel on a near-light-speed rocket into outer space and return, you could travel thousands of years into the Earth's future. Scientists have verified this time-slowing or dilation effect in several ways. For example, in the 1970s, scientists used atomic clocks on airplanes to demonstrate a slight slowing of time compared to clocks on Earth. Time also significantly slows near regions with enormous masses. Despite their seeming difficulty, there are numerous ways to theoretically build time machines for travel to the past that do not violate any known laws of physics. Most of these methods rely on high gravities or wormholes, hypothetical shortcuts through space and time. To Isaac Newton, time was like a river flowing straight. Nothing could divert the river. Einstein demonstrated that the river could curve but never return to itself, which would be a metaphor for backward time travel. In 1949, mathematician Kurt Gödel went even further and showed that the river could return to itself. In particular, he found a disturbing solution to Einstein's equations that allows backward time travel in a rotated universe. He had given backward time travel a mathematical foundation for the first time in history. Physicists have observed throughout history that phenomena, unless explicitly forbidden, often occur. Today, designs for time travel machines are proliferating in top science labs, including such wild concepts as Thorne wormhole time machines, Gott loops that involve cosmic strings, Gott shells, Tipler and Van Stockham cylinders, and Kerr rings. In the next few hundred years, perhaps our heirs will explore space and time to degrees we cannot currently fathom. In 1950, American mathematician Claude Shannon wrote a paper about how to program a computer to play chess. In 1951, British mathematician and computer scientist Alan Turing was the first to produce a program that could complete a full game. Since then, software engineers have improved the software, and computer hardware engineers have improved the hardware. IBM's Deep Blue, a custom computer, defeated the top human player for the first time in 1997. Since then, humans have not had a chance because computer chess hardware and software keep improving yearly. How do engineers create a computer that can play chess? They employ machine intelligence, which is very different from human intelligence in chess. This is a brute force way to solve the chess problem. Think of a board with a set of chess pieces on it. Engineers create a way to score that arrangement of pieces. The score may include the number of pieces on each side, their positions, whether the king is well protected, etc. Now imagine a very simple chess program. You are playing black, but the computer is playing white. You have just made a move. The program could try moving every white piece to a valid position, scoring the board with each move. Then it would pick the move with the best score. This program could play chess, but it would need to improve. What if the computer went a step further? The computer moves each white piece to all possible positions. Then, the system tries every possible black move for each white move and scores all those boards. The number of possible moves for the computer to score has grown significantly, but it can now play better. What if the computer looks multiple levels ahead? The number of boards the computer must score with each new level explodes. The computer gets better. When Deep Blue won in 1996, it scored 200 million boards per second. It had memorized all common openings and gambits. It could prune out vast numbers of moves. In 2017, the program AlphaZero beat world champion chess-playing computer programs, having taught itself how to play in less than a day. During our Renaissance, we discovered ancient texts and new knowledge that flooded medieval Europe with the light of intellectual transformation, wonder, creativity, exploration, and experimentation. Imagine the consequences of contacting an alien race. The wealth of alien scientific, technical, and sociological information would fuel another far more profound renaissance. Given that our universe is both ancient and vast, an estimated 250 billion stars in our Milky Way galaxy alone, the physicist Enrico Fermi asked in 1950, "Why have we not yet been contacted by an extraterrestrial civilization?" Of course, many answers are possible. Advanced alien life could exist, but we are unaware of their presence. Intelligible aliens may be so rare that we never encounter them. The Fermi paradox, as it is known today, has given rise to scholarly works attempting to address the question in fields ranging from physics and astronomy to biology. Medical researchers use laboratory-grown human cells to study cell functions and develop disease treatments. Researchers can freeze these cells and share them among themselves. However, most cell lines divide only a limited number of times and then die. A breakthrough occurred in 1951 when American biologist George Gay cultured cells removed from a cancerous cervix tumor and created the first immortal human cells. These HeLa cells, named after the unwitting donor, Henrietta Lacks, continue multiplying. Gay freely distributed the cells to scientists upon request, publishing over 60,000 scientific articles and 11,000 patents based on the cell's research. Author Rebecca Skloot writes, "If you could pile all HeLa cells ever grown onto a scale, they'd weigh more than 50 million metric tons, as much as 100 Empire State Buildings." HeLa cells played a crucial role in the development of the polio vaccine, revealed the secrets of cancer, viruses, and the effects of the atomic bomb, contributed to significant advancements such as in vitro fertilization, cloning, and gene mapping, and have garnered billions of dollars in sales. HeLa cells contain an active telomerase enzyme that continually repairs the ends of chromosomes that would normally become too damaged after multiple cell divisions to permit the cells to propagate. The genetic makeup of HeLa cells is far from ordinary, as they contain genes from human papillomavirus 18 and extra copies of several human chromosomes. Because of their prolific nature and ability to spread on airborne particles, the cells have contaminated many other cell cultures in laboratories. Lacks died at age 31 from the spread of her cancer, and her family did not learn of her immortality until decades later. Since then, researchers have launched the cells into space to test the effects of low gravity, and they have been used in research topics ranging from AIDS to toxic substance testing. Cellular automata are simple mathematical systems that can model various physical processes with complex behaviors. Applications include modeling the spread of plant species, the propagation of animals such as barnacles, the oscillations of chemical reactions, and the spread of forest fires. Some classic cellular automata consist of a grid of cells that can exist in two states, occupied or unoccupied. The occupancy of one cell is determined by a simple mathematical analysis of neighboring cells. Mathematicians define the rules, set up the game board, and let the game play itself out on a checkerboard world. Though the rules governing the creation of cellular automata are simple, the patterns they produce are very complicated and sometimes seem almost random, like a turbulent fluid flow or the output of a cryptographic system. Stanislaw Ulam's earliest work began in the 1940s, when he modeled crystal growth using a simple lattice. Ulam suggested that mathematician John von Neumann use a similar approach to modeling self-replicating systems, such as robots that could build other robots. Around 1952, von Neumann created the first 2D cellular automata with 29 states per cell. Von Neumann proved mathematically that a particular pattern could make endless copies of itself within the cellular universe. The most famous two-state, two-dimensional cellular automaton is the game of life, invented by John Conway and popularized by Martin Gardner in Scientific American. Despite its simple rules, the game of life generates an amazing diversity of behaviors and forms, including gliders, arrangements of cells that move across their universe and can even interact to perform computations. In 2002, Stephen Wolfram published A New Kind of Science, reinforcing that cellular automata can have significance in virtually all science disciplines. For thousands of years, humankind has been trying to understand the origin of life. Biochemistry had to start somewhere, and it was much simpler initially. But what did that beginning look like, and how did it get going? Could it happen again on other planets? How similar would it be to what we know? We still need answers to all these questions. American chemists Stanley Miller and Harold C. Urey made a significant breakthrough in 1952. To see what compounds might form, the idea was to take a believable prebiotic atmosphere and subject it to heat and the equivalent of lightning. They sealed an apparatus with water, methane, ammonia, and hydrogen, heated the water, fired electrical sparks across the vapor, and then cooled the system again to send the condensate back into the water layer. They set the process to cycle repeatedly, and within the first day, it started producing colored compounds. After 2 weeks, the process transformed over 10% of the methane into more complex compounds, leading to a startling analysis of the mixture. At least 11 of the 20 key amino acids were present, along with many simple carbohydrates and other molecules. Modern sample reanalysis reveals the production of all major amino acids, some of which were initially below detection limits. Researchers have conducted numerous similar experiments in various potential early atmospheres and conditions. Almost all of them produce rich brews of simple organic compounds, including many of what we would now call the building blocks of life. These arise from the formation of reactive molecules from the original gases, such as hydrogen cyanide and formaldehyde, which can go on to produce complex structures. The mixture of compounds in samples like the Murchison meteorite can be quite similar to those produced by these experiments, and spectroscopic studies have found many of these compounds around other stars, comets, and interstellar nebulae. Small biomolecules are swimming in the universe. The British journalist Matt Ridley writes, "The double helix structure of DNA has been a shockingly fundamental source of new understanding about our bodies and minds, our past and future, our crimes and illnesses." The DNA, deoxyribonucleic acid molecule, may be considered a blueprint containing hereditary information. It also controls protein production and the complex development of cells starting from a fertilized egg. Just as an error in an architectural blueprint for a building might lead to home collapses or leaks, errors in the DNA, such as changes in the sequence caused by mutagens, might lead to disease. Thus, understanding the DNA messages can lead to cures for diseases, including developing new drugs. At a molecular level, DNA resembles a twisted ladder in which the different rungs of the ladder, referred to as bases, represent a code for protein production. Each sperm cell or egg's 23 chromosomes, which organize DNA into structures called chromosomes, contain approximately 3 billion DNA base pairs in the human genome. Generally speaking, a gene is a DNA sequence containing a chunk of information that, for example, specifies a particular protein. In 1953, molecular biologists James Watson and Francis Crick discovered the double helical structure of DNA using molecular modeling methods, along with X-rays and other data from scientists such as Maurice Wilkins and Rosalind Franklin. Recombinant DNA technology enables the creation of genetically modified organisms by inserting new DNA sequences, compelling the organism to produce desirable products like insulin for human consumption. Forensic detectives can study DNA left at crime scenes to help identify potential criminals. In December 1961, the New York Times reported on breakthroughs in understanding the genetic code in DNA by explaining that the science of biology has reached a new frontier, leading to a revolution far greater in its potential significance than the atomic or hydrogen bomb. Over the centuries, clocks have become more accurate. Early mechanical clocks, such as the 14th century Dover Castle clock, varied by several minutes daily. In the 1600s, pendulum clocks made mechanisms accurate enough to record minutes and hours. In the 1900s, vibrating quartz crystals were accurate to fractions of a second per day. In the 1980s, cesium atom clocks lost less than a second in 3,000 years, and in 2009, an atomic clock known as NIST F1, a cesium fountain atomic clock, was accurate to a second in 60 million years. Atomic clocks are accurate because they count periodic events involving two different energy states in an atom. We can build and run clocks independently to measure the same time intervals between events because identical isotope atoms, atoms with the same number of nucleons, are the same everywhere. One common type of atomic clock is the cesium clock, in which a microwave frequency causes the atoms to transition from one energy state to another. The natural resonance frequency of the cesium atom, 9,192,631,770 Hz, or cycles per second, triggers the fluorescence of the cesium atoms and serves as the definition of the second. We combine and average measurements from many cesium clocks worldwide to define an international timescale. The GPS, Global Positioning System, exemplifies one important use of atomic clocks. This satellite-based system enables users to determine their positions on the ground. To ensure accuracy, the satellites must send out accurately timed radio pulses, which the receiving devices must use to determine their positions. English physicist Louis Essen created the first accurate atomic clock in 1955, based on the energy transitions of the cesium atom. Labs worldwide continuously research clocks based on other atoms and methods to increase accuracy and decrease cost. Oral contraceptives, or birth control pills, were among the most socially significant medical advances of the 20th century. Supplied with an inexpensive and effective means to prevent pregnancies, more women graduated from college and entered the workforce. In the 1930s, researchers determined that high concentrations of the hormone progesterone, which is normally present during pregnancy, also trick a non-pregnant body into behaving as if it were pregnant, and thus prevent the monthly release of an egg. Working independently in the early 1950s, American chemists Carl Djerassi and Frank Colton discovered ways to manufacture chemical compounds that mimicked natural progesterone. American biologist Gregory Pincus confirmed that progesterone shots prevent egg release from mammals' ovaries. Margaret Sanger, a famous advocate for birth control, helped Pincus obtain the necessary funding to develop a hormonal birth control pill for humans. Pincus selected Colton's formula, and in 1955, he and colleagues announced clinical trial results demonstrating the pill's efficacy. Changes in the cervical mucus, which inhibits sperm entrance to the uterus, and changes in the uterine lining, which inhibits egg implantation, enhance contraception in addition to inhibiting ovulation. US regulators approved the pill for contraception in 1960, and the Searle Drug Company named it Enovid. The original formulation, which also contained the hormone estrogen, had some undesirable side effects. However, modern formulations contain much reduced doses of hormones and have been shown to decrease ovarian, endometrial, and colon cancers. Generally speaking, women smokers who take the pill have an increased risk of heart attacks or strokes. Today, hormonal formulations are available, including pills only with progestin, a type of progesterone, that supply constant hormone doses or change from one week to the next. In 1968, Pope Paul VI condemned artificial birth control, including the pill. Although adoption of the pill was rapid in the United States, distribution of contraceptives to unmarried women was not legal in Connecticut until 1972. Medical experts Arthur and Elaine Shapiro write, "The panorama of treatment since antiquity provides ample support for the conviction that, until recently, the history of medical treatment is essentially the history of the placebo effect." For example, the first 3 editions of the London Pharmacopoeia, published in the 17th century, included such useless drugs as ENIAC, moss from the skull of victims of violent death, and Vigo's plaster, including viper's flesh, live frogs, and worms. Today, the term parasite often refers to a fake drug, such as a sugar pill, or a sham surgery, such as cutting the skin but going no deeper to treat a condition, that nevertheless produces a perceived or actual improvement in those patients who believe the medical intervention will turn out to be effective. The placebo effect suggests that patient expectations and the role of the brain in physical health are important, particularly for subjective outcomes such as pain levels. In 1955, American physician Henry Beecher documented the famous case of soldiers in World War II who experienced significant pain relief when given injections of saline solutions when the morphine supplies were not available. One mechanism for the placebo effect appears to involve endogenous opioids, natural painkillers produced by the brain, as well as the activity of the neurotransmitter dopamine. In one study, mice given a compound that suppresses the immune system and a sweet-tasting chemical developed a conditioned response over time, leading to immune suppression when given only the sweetener. Thus, conditioning may play a role in human placebos. People administered a stimulant placebo may experience an increase in blood pressure, while alcohol placebos may lead to intoxication. The pill's color and size often significantly affect perceived effectiveness. The placebo effect also varies depending on the society and country tested. A nocebo response refers to a negative response to a placebo, such as the feeling of pain when the patient believes that the inert drug may have unpleasant side effects. Cell fractionation and electron microscopy opened a new frontier in biology, allowing for the visualization of the cell's interior contents and determining their biological functions. Albert Claude, a Belgian biologist at Rockefeller University, developed the process of cell fractionation in 1930. This process involves grinding up a cell to release its contents and centrifuging it at various speeds to separate the contents based on weight. George Palade, a Romanian-born American student, refined Claude's cell fractionation process in 1955, using an electron microscope to study these cell fractions. Palade was the first to identify and describe small granules, named ribosomes in 1958, and found to be the site of protein synthesis within the cell. Claude and Palade, the latter often called the father of modern cell biology and the most influential cell biologist ever, were co-recipients of the 1974 Nobel Prize. The protein factory. Each cell in all living organisms contains ribosomes, which are guided by the genetic code to act as factories for synthesizing proteins.